All is well, and this video was actually a request regarding Moon-Mars opposition. So more specifically, Moon-Mars opposition in Synastry. So when we have the moon, if you're not aware of what the moon entails, it's our feelings, it's our imagination, it is our memory storehouse, it's what it kind of assimilates our thoughts and disperses it to it acts as a conduit, I'd like to say, because when we're dealing with either Mars or Mercury, we're determining through the moon on how we're going to handle any particular problem. So the depth of one's essence of their being. The moon is also related to fertility, Cancer, right? Cancer is ruled by the moon. It shapes basically how we react. And then when we have Mars, and so we can also think of the moon as the womb, right? More of a feminine aspect. Then when we have Mars, Mars is our sexuality. Mars is how we go about things. It is our fighting style, I like to say. It is the way we assert ourselves. You know, are we passive? Are we passive aggressive? Do we have that right median, right? So, yeah, Mars is also our intensity, our sexual intensity as well. So, when we have an opposition between the two, now we're talking about, and then Mars is masculine, right? It's a masculine planet. So, when we have the Mars and Moon in opposition, it can be a good thing to the degree that if both individuals are acting from a place of, how can I say, if the moon person doesn't have, or if they do have a lot of heavy fire energy, that might make it a little bit harder for them to tap into their feminine moon aspect, and the assumption that their moon is actually in a feminine sign. So that might make it a bit challenging, right? And vice versa for the individual with the Mars. So when we're talking about oppositions, we're speaking of challenges. There can be conflict, but there's also growth. I wouldn't say it has as many ups and downs as a square would have. But here's the thing. If the individuals at hand, if they're not sensitive to the other's needs, you know, because some people just don't really take the time to really dive that deep into somebody else's style or way of emotions. They may not be used to that. They may have never had to express that or look at that. So depending on where these two planets fall, depending on which signs, and of course on the entire chart as well, we have to look at the entire chart of both the individuals and the synastry, and you know, there's many other aspects. But if these two individuals are not vibrating at a higher frequency, it's going to cause conflict. So, with that said, there has to be a willingness to cooperate And so that may not be the easiest thing to do. So let me give you an example. But sometimes it can be a really positive situation, right? Because whenever we have an opposition, there's definitely something to be learned from the other. So either you're going to absolutely hate that person to a certain degree, and a lot of that what happened a lot of the time with sun signs, I notice. I'm an Aries, so my opposite is Libra. And I feel like Libras can be difficult for no reason. However, you know, I'm learning the other aspects of Libra and how I could benefit in changing my ways to be more aligned with that Venus aspect, right? The femininity aspect that a Mars, you know, Aries being ruled by Mars doesn't necessarily have off the bat. So that's where it can kind of be beneficial. Just a light touch on how that can be beneficial. So in essence, there's something to learn from the other. So when we're talking about the moon and Mars, though, you got the moon is where we're comfortable, right? And then we have Mars, which is war, the planet of war. So let's take, for example, the moon in Scorpio. Say one person has moon in Scorpio, and the other has Mars in Taurus. And so let's say that the Taurus person is the female and the male is the Scorpio moon. Now Scorpio moons are very, very intense. And, you know, a lot of the time it may seem like the Scorpio moon person is maybe not paying attention to what we're saying, but they're just listening. And sometimes depending on, because with the moon too, when we're talking about the moon holds on to memories, and Scorpio being so deep and it being about transformation and things that are underground and things that may be hidden. You're dealing with someone a lot of the time who's been hiding their emotions or hiding how they've been hurt, how their heart has been hurt, how they've been hurt as an individual. And the moon also rules that first 4 years of life, even though the moon is with us thereafter. But, you know, we got to take into consideration the depth of this particular moon and where it falls in an individual's chart. And right across from that, we have Taurus. Both are fixed signs. The good thing about this one here is that if you have a female with Mars in Taurus and the male with the Scorpio moon, there's going to be a certain level of understanding. And this is where actual growth and the evolving of an individual definitely comes into play. Because let's say that both individuals are on the same frequency, right? Then the Scorpio moon might feel a little more inclined to actually share their thoughts and feelings with the Mars person. And the Mars person will be very patient because the Mars in Taurus. Taurus females especially tend to be extremely slow to act. But let's not take that as, and some of them can be pushovers. Taurus aspect, a lot of Taurus suns. But nevertheless, when we have Mars in Taurus, they're going to be slow to anger. And I would say that a Taurus, one that has the Mars in Taurus, even though it might take them a while to say screw everything, they have to be very careful in how much of themselves that they're willing to give to the opposing factor. Because they might tend to be very loving and very understanding and overstanding of the other individual and may not necessarily be reaping any reciprocity from that individual. So then let's say that the same two people have moon, the female has moon in Cancer, and then the male with the Scorpio moon, that he has Mars in Capricorn. Mars is exalted in Capricorn, right? Might be good for things of work and that nature, right? Might be good for a lot of things. So when we have a female with the Cancer moon, let's not get it twisted with Cancer, though. Cancer is the mothering aspect. It is feminine. It is the caretaker, the nurturer. But a Cancer energy is very emotional. And they're not emotional in the sense of displaying that emotion verbally or kindly. They tend to be emotional on a whole nother level, especially once they get upset. And the thing about that Cancer energy too, they kind of know when to call it quits. And they may not let you be aware of that. They'll just do it. They're not really, they might warn you, they might throw out a warning or two, Cancer moon. But it's going to be more about the action that they take. Then you have the same individual that has a Scorpio moon, which is a male in this instance, with a Mars in Capricorn. This is a tough one, especially it being in opposition, because you're going to have, the moon in Cancer who wants to be, nurtured, loving. Now, again, I'm talking about both the more positive and negative sides of it, but again, both sides would have to be vibrating at the same frequency. So a Mars in Capricorn, Capricorn is really the boss. It's about structure, and it's going to be very hard to change the ways of a Mars in Capricorn, because this is the way that they do things, this is the way that they assert themselves, and this is how they take the actions that they take, especially with it being a male. So the female, if she doesn't have a lot of feminine aspects in her chart, is going to absolutely have to pull back and allow the Mars and Capricorn person to do what they do and to just follow their lead. So it can be that reciprocating of energy, right? And but if you have a Cancer moon who might have a lot of fire in their chart, or just has been through a lot of what have you, they may not be trying to hear what the Capricorn is saying. Now, if the reverse is true, if the Mars and Capricorn person tends to be a female, and the moon and Cancer person tends to be a male, I kind of feel like just off the rip that might flow a little bit better. But again, you have to consider all the aspects in the chart. So if these two individuals can, you don't want to waste your time in an opposition if you realize that the other person is not willing to learn, that they're not, that, you divulge some information about your feelings and how you may feel about whatever is going on between the two of you, and that they act like it doesn't matter, then really take that and run with it, because it's a battle that they're not ready to address with themselves. So why put yourself through that? But the positive thing about an opposition is if we open ourselves up to see, well, you know what? How can I kind of align myself with what it is this other individual needs? Because the Moon Mars can actually be a really good thing. Again, it depends on where the two individuals are in life, and you have to be open to learning and be willing to face your own demons, face your own fears, because this individual across from you is sort of like a mirror for you to. And maybe the mirror is not the best analogy, but they can show you how you can do things in an alternate way. However you say that. Can't think of the correct way to say that. I'll just blame Mercury in retro. So I think that's pretty much all I have to say about that aspect with the Moon Mars. I can only think of one Moon Mars situation that I was in offhand. And my Mars is in Leo, my natal Mars, and their moon is in Aquarius, and that's not, it would have been just way too much adjusting, and that person just really was not on the same wavelength, not ready to grow. So I would say with an opposition, just be ready to grow, be ready to cooperate, be aware of yourself, and you're going to learn a lot about yourself from this other individual. With it going both ways. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Taurus.